They didn't understand, not really. To them, it was just an animal, a four-legged, growling little earth beast with fur too thick for desert climates, and a bark that echoed off metal walls, a Peter, an attachment, an error of emotional overinvestment. To Commander Varn of the Kotha Dominion, it was a tactical nuisance. It had bitten one of his soldiers, ripped into a supply case, marked its territory on an armored skiff. So, during the siege of Outpost Redhill, he gave the order. One shot, no ceremony, no hesitation. The dog died before it finished growling, and everything else that followed was entirely the Kotha's fault. It was the last war, the last real one anyway, the kind with scorched skies and orbital strikes, where entire continents held their breath waiting to see which species would break first. The Kotha, sleek and cold-blooded with their curved blades and psychic tacticians, had been expanding for centuries. They thought Earth was an overgrown swamp with loud mammals and too many guns. Then they met the humans, and to their surprise, Earth didn't break. It adapted, quickly, brutally, but the price was high, so high that for a time, humanity wanted peace. Until that day, until Rook Anders walked into the smoking ruins of Redhill and dropped to his knees beside the crumpled, blood-matted fur of the only creature that had followed him through every hellhole from Phobos to Peltar Ridge. The dog's name was Cooper. He was an old mutt, half shepherd, half something else, rescued from a collapsed refugee kennel during the early months of the war. He didn't wear armor. He didn't speak. But he understood things in the way only dogs and ghosts can. Rook buried him with his own hands, using a shattered enemy blade to carve into the stone. And then he stood up, quiet, cold, changed. He never raised his voice. He never gave a speech. He simply said, "I'm done with war." Then he disappeared. The Kotha thought that was the end of it. They didn't notice that their extinction had just been scheduled. 3 months later, a mining station on the fringe moon of Vorka went silent. No alarms, no distress signals, no survivors. When Kotha scouts arrived, they found the airlocks welded shut from the inside, and the atmosphere scrubbers filled with a slow-release neurotoxin they couldn't trace. In the command center, someone had scrawled 3 words into the bulkhead with a plasma torch. Bad choice, Varn. 2 weeks later, a Kotha ambassador's private shuttle was found in geosynchronous orbit above his homeworld. Every crew member dead, systems intact, life support running. The ambassador had been suffocated with his own ceremonial robe, the symbol of his office stuffed into his mouth. On the mirror, a message traced into condensation. He was a good dog. Panic began to ripple through the Dominion. They blamed Earth. Earth said nothing. They blamed mercenaries. The mercs laughed and kept quiet. Then, someone dug through old war rosters, and they saw one name marked as discharged, untraceable: Anders, Rook. The Kotha dispatched assassins, 5 elite killers with thought armor and psychic daggers, trained since hatching to erase targets from reality. They never returned. Their ship did, though, drifting. Inside, only one thing remained: a dog tag. Cooper's, taped to the control panel with a note. "You sent 5. I was hoping for 10. Stories began to circulate, of a ghost in the ventilation shafts of a Kotha dreadnought, of a human who didn't show up on scanners, who could live without oxygen longer than was natural, who rewired an entire station's gravity just to drop its officers down an open shaft. Whispers, at first. But then came the footage. Grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. A lone man in a tattered black jacket, scarred, silent, eyes that looked carved from vengeance itself. In his hand, a combat knife engraved with a name, Cooper. No insignia, no flag. Just methodical, unspeakable precision. Kotha broadcasters tried to censor it. Didn't matter. The message was clear. This wasn't diplomacy. This was retribution. In a high tower on the Kotha homeworld, Commander Varn stared out over the city he helped conquer with a glass of fermented bloodfruit shaking in his hand. "He's just one man," he muttered. His advisor, pale and jittering, didn't answer. "He's mortal." Still no answer. Varn turned, furious. "Say something." The advisor just whispered, "He's not after war. He's after you." And deep in the dark, Rook smiled. Because that part was true. In a remote sector, A forgotten military outpost lit up with unauthorized re-entry alarms. Security scrambled, lights blared, and Rook Anders stepped out of a stolen dropship like he belonged there. He didn't need an army. He had purpose. He had rage, and he had nothing left to lose. He walked through the corridors like a shadow, disabling cameras, locking doors behind him, slicing through Kotha security teams like they were paper dolls dressed in arrogance. When the base commander demanded his surrender over intercom, Rook simply rerouted the signal into every corridor and said, "You shouldn't have touched the dog." Then he blew the core reactor and vanished into the black. The Dominion began evacuating outposts, fleeing old colonies, spreading lies about terrorist Earth cells. But Earth didn't claim him, because Rook Anders was not fighting a war anymore. He was ending it, one Kotha at a time, and he'd only just started. They thought war ended with treaties. That pain could be buried beneath peace talks and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. That if they just rebuilt fast enough, cities, politics, economies, the ghosts wouldn't follow. But they hadn't met Rook Anders. The Kotha called him the Phantom. Human Command called him an unfortunate loose end. But the galaxy knew him as one thing, the man who kept a promise to his dog. 3 Dominion moons had fallen silent in the past month. Each one left the same way. Crew missing or dead, station disabled, every escape pod sealed shut with fusion-welded doors, often with the message, "Still not Varn," scratched into the walls. A new language was forming, written in blood and fear. The target was clear, Commander Varn, the one who gave the order that killed Cooper. But Rook didn't just want Varn, he wanted everyone who stood by and watched it happen. Rook's next stop was Keitha Prime's outer mining colony, Talar 3, a fortress city carved into rock and powered by heat drills sunk into the planet's crust. It was remote, isolated, commanded by one General Resh. Resh was Varn's cousin, and when the news reached her that Rook was inbound, she didn't panic. She threw a gala. "Let him come," she declared in her glass-floored command hall, overlooking magma rivers. "Let the humans see what Kotha strength looks like. Let him see that we are not afraid." 2 hours into the party, the power grid failed. 5 minutes later, the main reactor vented coolant into the officers' lounge, flash freezing a third of the command staff. A security camera caught the silhouette of a man in a thermal cloak walking past the primary junction box. No weapons drawn, just carrying a small photo in his hand. A picture of Cooper, worn, torn at the edges, and just beneath it, written in Rook's sharp-etched hand, he was family. General Resh survived the initial sabotage. She scrambled with 2 guards to a private lift, bypassed standard security protocols, and ascended to the roof where her personal skiff waited. The guards checked the perimeter. Clear. They opened the skiff. Rook Anders was already inside. One of the guards reached for his sidearm. He didn't finish the motion. Rook didn't say anything as he stepped out into the wind-blasted rooftop and walked toward Resh. She raised her hands. "I didn't kill him. I didn't even know." "I know," Rook said. Then he drew a small data crystal and tossed it to her feet. "I want locations." She stared at it, trembling. "What if I don't?" Rook's eyes, gray as thunderclouds, didn't blink. "Then I add one more name to the list." Resh picked up the crystal. He left her there, alone with her terror, the wind howling like a mourning dog. Word of the encounter spread like solar fire through Kotha Command. No one knew how he got in, no one could track how he got out. But the effect was immediate. Commanders began falsifying records, destroying surveillance, abandoning outposts, in hopes that removing themselves from galactic awareness would somehow protect them. It didn't. Because Rook wasn't using tech, he was using guilt, fear, memory, and some very old contacts who owed him favors, mercs, smugglers, rogue AI cores, even a few ex-Kotha sympathizers who'd seen too much during the war. Rook was building a map, not of locations, of people, of every officer who laughed when Cooper died. He found the next one in a casino on Frelax Station, gambling under a false name, Vorn Deck, former artillery chief, loved cards, hated humans, and was rumored to brag about how he once shot a mutt so hard it bounced. He was halfway through a bottle of imported Glari wine when the dealer dealt him a losing hand, and noticed the human sitting across from him had been there the whole time. "Hit me," Rook said, laying down a card. Vorndeck blinked. This table is private." "So was Redhill," Rook said, And then he flipped his card. An old Earth playing card, King of Spades, with a burn mark in the corner. The last toy Cooper ever chewed. Deck lunged. Rook sidestepped, spun the chair, and drove it into the Kotha's midsection. The dealer screamed. Patrons scattered. 2 minutes later, Deck was hanging by his ankles from the gravity balcony, screaming into the void as Rook held him by the collar. "I want Varn," Rook growled. "Tell me where he sleeps." "I don't. He moves. I swear." Rook didn't flinch. "I've got 4 more seconds of patience." And somehow, Deck realized he meant it. So he gave it up. Everything. A convoy schedule, a flight path, a bunker compound on Tarvik Prime. Rook dropped him anyway, into a security net. He wasn't a monster, but he made sure Deck saw the look in his eyes before he fell. It wasn't hatred. It was disappointment. Tarvik Prime, where Varn was hiding. Not a palace, not a fortress. A bunker, buried in an asteroid belt, accessible only through a coded freighter route disguised as mining ops. The place was quiet, cold, paranoid, exactly what Rook was expecting. He didn't storm it, he didn't fire a shot, he simply waited. For 2 weeks, one by one, he intercepted every food shipment, every message drone, every heat vent diagnostic, until the silence inside the bunker got loud enough to break its own mind. And then he sent the message, no words, just an image, a photo of Cooper, tail wagging, with a single line underneath. "You're next." The silence in Varn's bunker wasn't peaceful. It had weight. It pressed on the walls. The kind of silence that made grown soldiers jump at the hum of cooling vents and send panicked glances at shadows that hadn't moved in hours. Commander Varn hadn't slept in 4 days. He sat alone in the dim green light of his command table, staring at the photo that had arrived via scrambled comms. The dog. That dog. Its tail wagging, its eyes wide and trusting, and that line beneath it. "You're next." It wasn't a threat. It was a schedule. Rook didn't rush. He never did. He moved like gravity had been told to get out of his way. Quiet, patient, focused. Tarvik Prime's belt was a nightmare of rogue debris, electromagnetic interference, and obsolete orbital mines that still hummed with half-dead AI subroutines. But Rook made it through. Not because he was lucky, but because he had planned for this. He'd been planning since the second they put Cooper in the ground. His ship, barely spaceworthy by modern standards, looked like a junker. It sounded like a death trap. But hidden under rusted panels were stealth modules stolen from 7 different species, half of which didn't even officially exist. As he drifted into the shadow of the asteroid bunker, Rook powered down everything but life support and tapped the side of his seat twice. A panel slid open, revealing a tiny collar. Old. Faded. He clipped it to his belt. "This is for you, Coop," he whispered. Then he vanished into the rock. Inside the bunker, paranoia had bloomed into chaos. The security team was down to half strength. 3 had resigned, 2 had accidentally spaced themselves after a false alarm, and 1 had simply shot himself in the foot to get out early. The ones who remained double-checked their weapons every 20 minutes and refused to go anywhere alone. Varn's personal guards were the last to snap. They locked down the lower levels, sealed themselves inside the escape wing, and sent an encrypted message to Dominion Command. "He's here. We're not trained for this." The reply? "You're on your own." Because even the Dominion didn't want to tangle with Rook Anders anymore. The first system failure was the lights. They dimmed at 2:14 local bunker time. Not off, just not enough. Just enough to make everything harder to see. Then the temperature dropped, slowly, too slowly to trigger automatic climate correction. By 3:20, breath was visible in the halls. By 4 a.m., frost had crept across the inside of the security cameras. Then the recording started playing. Footage from Red Hill. Grainy images of Cooper, still alive, barking, running through rubble, dragging wounded soldiers to safety. Footage that no one outside the unit should have had. And then the final clip. Cooper, standing beside Rook, wagging his tail, looking up at the camera as the Kotha trooper raised a plasma rifle. Cut to black. Varn screamed. He ordered the mainframe purged, hard reset, AI shut down. But it didn't matter. The screens turned back on anyway, and the words blinked across them. I remember. Rook didn't kick in the doors. He didn't need to. He slid in through a maintenance shaft used for waste filtration, one that hadn't been checked in months because it was too small for infiltration. He moved like frost, creeping in from the edges, and when the first guard came around a corner, weapon half raised, flashlight shaking, Rook didn't shoot him. He whispered, "Did you laugh when he died?" The guard froze, then nodded. That was enough. The lights flickered again, and the screaming started. By the time Rook reached the central chamber, the only thing left standing between him and Varn was a blast door coded to Varn's DNA. Rook stood there for a moment, silent. Then he pulled a small cylinder from his belt. Inside, a tissue sample taken from Varn's cousin Resh before she was relocated. The door blinked, then opened, and Varn was waiting, alone. He'd expected a monster, a beast. Instead, what he saw was worse. Rook Anders stood in the doorway like the storm outside had shaped itself into a man, tired, weathered, but with eyes sharp enough to cut through metal. "Why?" Varn asked. Not out of ignorance, but desperation. A child caught in a fire, he'd said himself. "You killed a dog," Rook said. Varn laughed, just once, a sharp, hysterical sound. "It was an animal. It was mine." And that was all there was to say. They didn't fight. Varn tried to run, made it 6 steps. A single shot rang out, not to kill, but to take his legs out from under him. He collapsed, wailing. Rook walked up, placed the butt of his rifle against the commander's chest, and looked him in the eye. "This isn't about species," he said. "It's about respect." He tossed something on the floor, the same dog tag he'd left in so many places before. But this time, it was burned, half melted. Cooper's name barely visible. Varn whimpered, "What happens now?" Rook leaned in close. "You die like you lived, alone, in a place no one will mourn." Then he stood and walked away, leaving Varn behind. The air scrubbers had already been set to cycle out oxygen over the next 30 minutes, plenty of time to panic, not enough to escape. As Rook climbed into his ship and set coordinates for deep orbit, he looked out the viewport once more. No fireworks, no victory banners, just silence. And for once, it didn't press on his chest, because for the first time since Red Hill, something had lifted, and somewhere, maybe in whatever passed for heaven, a dog wagged his tail. The galaxy didn't know what to do with him. A single human had dismantled one of the most feared military species in recorded history. Not with an army, not with diplomacy, but with grief, precision, and the steady, burning rage of loss. And he did it alone. But now? Now the warpath was silent. Commander Varn was dead. His body left slumped in the oxygen-starved ruins of a bunker the Dominion refused to retrieve. Tarvik Prime had gone dark. The entire system declared a ghost quadrant. Rook Anders had gone quiet, and the galaxy held its breath. Because silence from him was terrifying. Rook didn't return to Earth. He didn't report to any faction. No medals, no fanfare. Instead, he docked his ship in a drifting junkyard, orbiting a dead star, a place even scavengers avoided because of the magnetic anomalies. He wired a beacon to a secured frequency, broadcasting a simple message on repeat: "Closure reached. Standing down." That message wasn't for humans. It was for everyone else. The Dominion fractured within days. The death of Varn had been symbolic, yes, but more than that, it had become a warning, one they couldn't spin or suppress. This is what happens when you forget what loyalty costs humans. The former Kotha war councils tried to regroup, failed. Their mercenaries deserted, colonies rebelled. Species once bullied under Kotha policy declared independence under a new rallying cry, "Don't touch the dog." It wasn't just a slogan. It was doctrine, but deep in the archives of the Galactic Concord, someone else was watching. Dr. Elu Moran, xenohistorian, archivist, and, unfortunately for everyone involved, a human with a curious streak that had ruined 3 careers and made one interstellar conspiracy unravel on live broadcast. She had questions, too many, and they all pointed to one photo, the one Rook kept of Cooper. She'd seen it during the footage leaked from Frelax Station. It was brief, half a second, but she had paused it, enhanced the frame, and stared at it for days, because something didn't add up. That dog wore a collar, and the emblem on the collar, it wasn't military issue, it wasn't even Earth origin, It was pre-human expansion, older than the Sol colonization effort, older than the invention of the warp drive. It matched a symbol she'd seen once, in a restricted scroll recovered from the ruins of a derelict Ark species library, a species wiped out before humans even entered the galactic stage. The symbol meant Guardian. Dr. Marin dug deeper. She accessed declassified data from Red Hill, uncovered logs from Rook's squad, noticed something strange. Cooper had been more than a dog. He'd survived plasma fire, tracked enemies across solar storms, once dragged Rook's unconscious body across a kilometer of broken terrain after an ambush. No food, no oxygen, no aid. And there was one final report, never published. A medic's scan after Red Hill listed Cooper's internal physiology as inconsistent. Organ density and neuromapping resemble Earth canine structure, but show signs of artificial enhancement and adaptive nanofiber strands in bone marrow. Recommend further testing. That file was sealed. Until now. Moran stared at the data and whispered aloud, "He wasn't just a dog. He was something else." Rook didn't respond to comms, not at first, but eventually, after 5 pings and a packet of decrypted data attached to Moran's 6th attempt, he replied. One line, "Meet me at 837 Theta Rho. Bring answers." The location? The coordinates of Cooper's grave. It wasn't much, just a rocky, forgotten world with no name, where a small cairn of hand-stacked stones sat beneath a tree that shouldn't have grown in the region's harsh climate. Rook stood beside it when Moran landed. He looked older, not tired, not broken, just older. Like time had stopped being his enemy and started being a friend who just sat with him quietly. He didn't speak at first, just nodded toward the grave. "She was right," he said after a while. Marin blinked. "She?" "An old field surgeon. Said he wasn't normal. Cooper. Said he knew things, reacted faster than he should, understood too much." Moran swallowed. "I ran the data, the collar. It has a Guardian seal." "I figured." "You knew?" "I suspected." Silence again. Then Rook knelt, placed a hand on the stones and said, "He saved more lives than I ever could, took more bullets, carried more weight, and all he wanted was to be near me, to be my shadow." Moran nodded, whispering, "He might have been part of something ancient, something built for more." Rook looked up, eyes fierce. "He didn't need to be part of something. He was mine. That was enough." But even he couldn't ignore the truth. The Dominion hadn't just killed his dog. They'd extinguished a relic, a protector, a living artifact left behind by a civilization that might have built guardians to watch over humanity in its infancy. And Cooper had been one of them, hidden among strays, waiting. And now, he was gone. "Why tell me?" Marin asked quietly. Rook looked toward the stars. "Because someone needs to remember." Then he turned, stepping into his ship. The engines hummed low. "Where will you go now?" she called out. He didn't answer at first, but just before the hatch sealed, his voice drifted back. "Somewhere that still lets dogs in." And then he was gone. Back at Concord, Dr. Marin published a redacted report. She didn't mention Guardians, didn't leak the nanostructure data. She just published the title, "Loyalty Beyond Death, The Red Hill Dog and the Man Who Followed." It was required reading within weeks, especially in Kotha reform schools, especially for species who still wondered, why do humans fight so hard for such small creatures? They never understood, but they remembered. The stars don't hold grudges, but humans do, and sometimes they leave legacies behind, not of conquest or ideology, but of grief, carved into history so deep even time can't erase it. The war was over. Rook Anders had disappeared again. But across the galaxy, stories were growing like wildfire, told in hushed voices behind market stalls, whispered in training academies, and painted onto the sides of refugee freighters like warnings to anyone who forgot Earth's most dangerous quality. We remember. It started small. A mural appeared on the burned husk of a former Kotha embassy. It showed a human in armor kneeling beside a small, shaggy dog. Behind them, the wreckage of a battlefield. Above them, 3 words, "He was family." Then came the monuments. Unofficial at first, stacked stones, metal plates etched with paw prints, patches bearing Cooper's name. On a frozen moon near Crethar's Divide, a battalion of human and alien engineers built an orbital ring named Canis Line. Every drone on patrol wore a collar. It wasn't policy, it was tradition. The Conquered didn't know how to frame the narrative. They tried calling it an unfortunate revenge arc. That didn't work. They tried saying, the individual known as Rook Anders is not representative of all human behavior. That didn't work either, because humanity wasn't apologizing. They were commemorating, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it. This wasn't just grief, it was institutionalized loyalty, the kind of fierce, irrational, beautifully terrifying devotion that had built nations, crossed oceans, and now spanned stars. But the biggest shift came quietly. At the edge of known space, a listening station went dark. It wasn't attacked, no damage. When a scout team arrived, they found the staff missing, equipment shut down, and a single message left behind on the main console. A man came asking questions about Guardians. We told him everything. Signed, Echo 17 staff. They were never seen again. Not dead, just gone. And on the outer rim, rumors swirled. That Rook wasn't done. That he was looking for more like Cooper. That maybe, just maybe, the dog hadn't been the only one. A century later, the legend still lived. Humans had become a cultural enigma, creatures of paradox, fierce, emotional, dangerously inventive, but above all, loyal. Alien tacticians revised their simulations. Diplomatic handbooks were rewritten to include emotional impact potential for species interactions. And under Galactic Threat Protocol 9b, a special clause was added. If a human enters a conflict due to the loss of a pet, immediate withdrawal is advised. No force escalation, no retaliation. Attempt diplomacy only after atonement and reparations are offered. It was called the Anders Clause. Back on Earth, a small museum opened on the site of the Red Hill Outpost ruins. It wasn't flashy, no tours, no souvenir shop. Just one path through a garden of silent flags, each one representing a fallen squad member. At the end, under a tree older than most colonies, sat a plaque. It read, Cooper loyal until the last breath, more than a dog, the one who reminded us what it means to stand by each other. In memory of the quiet hero, and the man who wouldn't forget. No one knows where Rook Anders ended up. Some say he found another guardian, raised it in secret, trained it for peace instead of war. Others say he walks forgotten trails on planets untouched by war, laying down old weapons one by one. And a few believe he's out there still, watching, waiting, not for vengeance anymore, but for those who forget why he started in the first place. But every so often, a warlord disappears, a slaver colony goes silent, a corrupt official is found alone, with no wounds, just a photo of a dog, placed gently beside them, and one line scrawled in the dirt, still remembering.